Hello everybody, I would like to welcome you all to my Grungeboard series. Yay, I'm finally doing it! Oh, it's been a long time of me talking about doing it and I'm actually doing it. So I'd like to welcome you all. It's going to be going on all week. I'm going to have something different every week. Starting off with the basics today. I have here some chipboard. Just some heavyweight, medium weight I guess, chipboard. Okay. I also have some grunge paper and some grunge board. All right. Now let's talk about the differences between these. I know most of you already know this, but there are some people who have questions of what the difference is and stuff like that. You can tell that they are very similar in color. Of course, chipboard also can be found in white and black. So that's an option. These can be colored, and I'll show you that in a little bit. First off, chipboard. It is really good for mini albums. You all know elements, embellishments, whatnot. It has pluses and it has minuses. Plus, it's very smooth, okay? Whereas grunge paper is also pretty smooth, but you can tell, I don't know if you can tell, but if you actually see it in person, you can tell it does have a bit of a texture because it is compressed paper fibers, but it still takes a lot of things really, really well. So, that is grunge paper, and you can see how thick it is. It's pretty thin. I would say quite thin. Okay, definitely thinner than the chipboard. And then there's grunge board. Grunge board is the same as grunge paper, except it's thicker. It is also the same. It has a very little bit of texture. Not a lot, just a little. And then there's a front and a back to grunge board. The back sort of has little kind of grooves, and picture like a textured cardstock, how the texture's there on one side and the back still has a little bit as well. It's kind of like that. There's definitely a front and a back to grunge board. So, and you'll be able to tell if you have it in your hands. The front is smooth and the back is a little grittier. All right, so you can tell the difference here between grunge paper and grunge board. Grunge board is a lot thicker, grunge paper is very thin. Now you just saw me move it, so you know that chipboard, when you bend it, does this. Do you see that? It has a definite ridge. It is pliable, I guess, but it doesn't go back to its normal state. Do you see that? It's got a ridge, which you can use as kind of like ripples, you know, but otherwise when it gets bent, do you see the sides? The sides you can tear it apart when it bends, and you know, it weakens it. It definitely weakens it. Do you see? I mean, I just bent it a little bit and it already separated it. All right. So that is a weakness of chipboard. It is sturdy when it has paper on it and stuff. It can take a beating, but if you're using it just plainly and you want to do anything to it, you have to be careful not to bend it because it will weaken really easily. Okay, so let's talk about how that's different with grunge board. Grunge board can be folded, and look at that, like folded and pressed, and it's back to normal. There's no grooves, there's no breaking apart. It's super duper strong, guys. I mean, I can roll it into a ball and crunch it up like this, and look, all I have to do is go like this, and you know what, it's pretty much back to the start. All right, and you can get it back to the start just by pressing something on it, but do you see how different that is? Okay, grunge paper is the exact same thing. It can be molded and bent just the same way, and it comes back. It is extremely strong. Let's look at the difference. Chipboard, if I try to rip it, it rips really easily, right? Really easily. Grunge board, do you see? Do you like my grunting? It's nice, huh, guys? You can't really rip it. It's really hard to rip it. You actually have to take your scissors, snip it, and pull really hard to rip that apart. It is super duper strong. Okay? Same thing with the paper. It does rip a little easier. The grunge paper is a little bit sturdy, but it does still hold up pretty darn well. See? Pretty well. Whereas this, do you see the difference? It's there. Anyway, you get the point. So, how does this equate to your projects? Well, let's first talk about what Grungeboard comes in. Grungeboard comes in lots of different ways. The grunge paper comes in 12 by 12 sheets, all right, which is really nice to use as a layout because it does make it more strong for you to add elements to. It also comes in 6 by 12, which is perfect for running through your die cutter. All right, all of die cutting can be done with chipboard. It can also be done with Grungeboard. This is a Grungeboard book that I'm going to be using in our grunge series. It comes with a front, which is very thick. It's thicker than, it's like a book cover. It is made of Grungeboard, but it's extremely thick, much thicker than the pages. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it is much thicker than the pages. So there's a front and a back, and then there's a bunch of inner pages. Now I have used at least one of these already, 2 of them, I think. So it has a couple less pages, but it comes with a bunch of pages. I think it's like 10 total. So we're going to be working with that, and there's a couple different shapes that comes in as well. It comes in alphas. The Grungeboard comes in all different alphas. This is the mini that came with a project that I did with Tim Holtz. This is the plain elements. There are elements, there are Christmas ones, there are just plain shapes, which I'm going to be using a lot of in this thing. So there's plain shapes as well. So it comes in a lot of things, and like I said, you can die cut it into whatever you want. So let's talk about the die cutting. Now I have a couple that I've done here in Grungeboard and also in chipboard. Okay, these are chipboard flowers. This one I also ran through the texture fade of the matrix. I think it's called the matrix. Oh no, the grid. I ran it through the grid. All right, so that is the chipboard, all embossed and done. Okay, and this is the Grungeboard flower, and this is Grungeboard, not grunge paper. And I've also, you can emboss those as well. All right. So let's talk about putting these two together. Now this, if you had the chipboard, you really would just ink it and have to use it just like this, because if you started to bend the flowers, you know, up or down or whatever to mold into a flower, you can see it does make those ridges like we had talked about. And it will make your flower a lot less sturdy, and it will come apart eventually. So that is definitely an issue when it comes to that. Now the grunge paper flower, you can, you can also tell here, if you twist these on the chipboard, you know, it's going to fall right off. Whereas if you can twist these, the Grungeboard, and make them all curly and whatever, and it will stay to some degree, you know, and you can just kind of play with it and roll it and do whatever you want to. And I'm sure you guys have seen the Grungeboard flower, but let me show it to you in case you haven't. This is Tim Holtz's Grungeboard flower, and this one was actually made by Tim Holtz because he gave them all to us to go onto our patchwork. So you can see how this is made with grunge paper. And you can see how it's easily bended and really, really pretty. But you can really mold it, especially look right here. That is all rolled and really, really pretty. And you can really only get that with grunge paper. Chipboard really is not going to roll like that. Do you see? It's just not going to. So there's a lot of different looks that you can accomplish with this type of flower as opposed to this one. That makes Grungeboard really cool for die cutting. Here's another example of how Grungeboard will really outdo chipboard. Say you have a mini album, like so, right? And you want to bind it using one of these hinges. Now this is the vintage, the hinge findings, or the vintage hardware, or hardware findings. It's a Tim Holtz die. You all know it. You put your brads here, your brad here, and you can wrap it around as a hinge. Now, with the chipboard, it is not going to be very strong. You know, I mean, look, I'm just moving it a little, and it's already breaking here, and it's bent in a very unattractive way right there. You can see that. And that will definitely break in like 3 uses, you know, like, okay, it's basically broken. You see? Now, if you use a grunge board, hintage findings, they bend. They bend nicely. They are super duper strong. Look at, I'm twisting it and moving it, and you know what? Nothing's happening. It's gorgeous. All right, so it is perfect for using to bind a mini because it is super duper strong and it's going to work really, really well. And it has a nice bend to it, and it works really well. Okay, so those are some different things. And all right, so now let's go on to how to ink it. I'm going to do it with some inking, some glimmer mist. Other things you can do with Grungeboard is paint, and we'll get into that later. I'm going to be doing some painting in my Grungeboard series, as well as some other things. So thanks for joining me today for our basics of the pluses of Grungeboard over chipboard. Now, I'm not saying that chipboard doesn't have its good aspects. It's fabulous. Use it all the time. It's cheaper and it works really good for many, many things. All flat embellishments and stuff like that work really well. It's only when it comes to if you want to bend, alter a lot, or really, really mess with your product in a very Tim Holtzy way, you're going to want Grungeboard, only because, I mean, chipboard just has its flaws. And Grungeboard has its flaws too. Like I said, it's not super duper smooth on the top. I think it's pretty smooth enough for me, but some people don't like the way it looks. It has a smell that I happen to think is fabulous, but other people really don't like the smell of Grungeboard. But anyway, I have a really cool project that we're going to start tomorrow, and I hope you're really going to like it, and you're going to learn some different techniques and things that you can do with Grungeboard that you may not have done before. And then I'm going to also play around a bit in another way too. So join me tomorrow for some more Grungeboard series, and until then, have fun. Thanks for joining me. Bye.